Nice outdoor patio right there. Barnett, I like it.
My wild backyard right now.
There's green, so it's good.
Right. Yeah, no, my house was built probably sometime around 1940. It doesn't have AC, so I'm like, no, not spending the evening in a stuffy house.
And Madam Host, we have another cab member in the attendee waiting room.
Thank you so much. Member Square, can we go ahead and test your audio and video, please?
Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Get kicked out.
Danielle, are we close to our magic number?
I believe we are. Let me just double check. Yeah, we have 8. We can go.
Great. We do request that you have your cameras on, but actually you haven't even gotten sworn in yet if you're member Richardson or member Square. So do they need their cameras on yet? Oh, yes, they do. Okay. Little technicality there. You wouldn't know that because you haven't been here yet. So thanks for joining us. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for attending this evening. Our Community Advisory Board meeting is now called to order, and Danielle will do roll call.
Right. Member Barnett?
Present.
Member Baldenegro?
Present.
Thank you. Member Harper? Don't see him. Member Inocencio?
Here.
Member Moore is not here. Member Richardson?
Here.
Member Roberts?
Here.
Thank you. Member Tornado is not here. Member Square?
Here.
Member Steffi?
Here.
And Chair Graves.
Present.
I have all members present except for members Harper, Moore, and Tornado.
Great, thank you for that. Now we will do our new member oaths of office. Welcome aboard to Member Square and Member Richardson, and Danielle will have you do your oath of office.
All right. So how this is going to work is I'll do one oath at a time. So I'll start with Member Richardson. I will ask you to state your name at the beginning, and then I'll read the paragraph. And after I read the paragraph, I'll ask if you agree to the oath. All set?
All set.
Okay. Let's see. So I state your name.
I, Candace Siobhan Richardson,
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Do you agree?
I do agree.
Thank you, and welcome to the cab.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Member Square, it's your turn. So same deal. I'll ask you to state your name, and then I will read the paragraph and then ask if you agree. Are you all set?
Yep.
All right, here we go. I state your name.
Damian Square.
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Do you agree?
I do.
Great, thank you, and welcome to the cab. And so to follow up, I will be emailing each of you a copy of your oath. I will need you to print it out, sign it, and then mail back the signature or the signed copy directly to me, and I'll give you the address and everything so that you can do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, welcome aboard. It is great to have new members, and you are in good company because I think that we just have a couple veterans at this point on the cab. So we are all just a little new together. So I love having you here. We're going to move on to item number 3, which is our public comments. Our host, do we have any public comments at this time?
We have no hands raised for public comments.
Great, thanks for that. And then item number 4 is our approval of our minutes from March 24th and our regular minutes that were kind of embedded in our agenda. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at those? Have any questions or comments? I don't see anybody flagging me down for questions or comments. I have a few. So I think that there's just a few little, maybe they're typos. I'm not really quite sure. I don't think that we had a vice chair at the last meeting. Vice Chair Moore stepped away at the meeting before that. So there's a few places where it designates that she was present as vice chair, that she made a motion as vice chair.
Okay, that is a simple fix. That's just
Okay.
on our end, so I'll have that fixed.
There's also under item number 1, the roll call, that it's board member Tornado. It says SEM, and that's duplicated in 2 places under present for roll call as well as approval of minutes.
Okay, something happened on the back end, so I will have the city clerk fix that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry. Yet another. They were short minutes, so it was easy to catch them. It wasn't you. On item number 4, absent, says board member Square. Board member Square was not a board member yet, so he wasn't really officially absent.
His official date actually was the date of the meeting, and so that's just how the system works. So it doesn't count against him.
Okay, all right. I just want to make note of that if we can, because
Sure.
That would. I don't know about you, member Square, but I would not want that one, right?
I'll make a note in the notes underneath.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is all from me.
Okay. So I will have to revise the minutes then and bring them back next month.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thanks
Yeah.
for bearing with me. And moving on from the approval of minutes is item number 5, which is our CAB announcements. So this is a time that we give all of our CAB members an opportunity to share any community news that's of interest to the CAB as a whole. Remember that you may be also sharing it with the public, because the public may be in attendance, and we welcome them to be in attendance here. After these announcements are made, I'll ask for public comment if there's any. Does anybody have any announcements? Any CAB member?
We need to approve the minutes. Oh no.
Sorry. No, with all of those changes, I have to bring a revised version of the minutes back so that we can have a vote.
Do I see any hands up for CAB announcements? It doesn't look like I do. I have one announcement. I'm going to include you, Member Richardson, because I appreciate that you were there at our workplace harassment training that was earlier. Was that this week already?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that was it was a really good training. I was really appreciative of the instructor to make it through some of the challenges that he had with sound, and I want to use that as a reminder to all of our CAB members to look at your required trainings and make sure that you get those in. We have a number of them as appointed members of the Community Advisory Board that we need to do, and I almost missed that one because I thought I had done it last year, and in fact I had not. So always check with, I believe it's Dina, with the city, and you can find out which trainings that you've done and which ones you still need to do. Make sure to sign up for them and get those completed. With no other announcements, I'll move on to public comment.
There are no hands raised for public comment.
All right, thank you for that. Item number 6 is our staff updates, and this is where Danielle's going to take it away with her updates.
Alrighty, let's see here. Okay, for the Community Empowerment Plan, super excited to let everyone know that the final report is complete, which I sent out today. And I just found out that the City Council special meeting for the study sessions on May 4th and 5th, with all copies of all of the reports that will be presented, have now been posted to the legislative calendar. If you don't want to go searching for that, I have made a note to send that agenda out to the CAB, so I will do that after today's meeting, so that everyone can read what's on it. Those study sessions will cover the listening session report, which I will provide a brief presentation on later, as well as the after action to the protests last summer report, the independent investigation to police use of force from those protests last summer, that report, the Human Rights Commission report, and then after our listening session report out on the 5th, the police department will come do an update on the reforms that they have made thus far. So that will be happening the first day. We'll cover those first 3 reports that I mentioned. Starts at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Second day, the 5th, starts at 10 a.m., starting with the listening session report. So please, once I send that email out later, share it with as many people as you can. Encourage people who are interested to attend, because the public will have an opportunity to provide public comment on all of the reports during the study session. Another update for the community empowerment plan, moving on to something different, is our online engagement platform called Let's Connect SR. We've been working on that for quite a while now, and I'm really happy to let everyone know that our site is almost completed. We will be doing a soft launch starting in about 2 weeks, which all of you will be able to participate in as soon as the site goes live. The few projects that we'll be starting with are our Multicultural Roots Project, the Mary Lou Lowrider Project, our Social Justice Mapping Project, a couple of planning projects from our Planning and Economic Department and Economic Development Department. And then the police department has an engagement project centered around updates to their officer training curriculum, which they want to get input from the community on what that updated curriculum looks like. So there will be a project site on the overall engagement platform for the community to participate in engagement around that. So again, soft launch happens in 2 weeks, and then the big launch with a very specific project, we're thinking a photo voice type of project, will happen in June. We want to get past all of the listening session and other reports to City Council, as well as a special meeting that we plan on having next month for the CAB. So switching over to that, we do have to change the meeting date of our May CAB meeting from the 26th to the 19th. And Magali will talk about this later, but there will be the last week in May a series of fire prevention events that will be happening in the afternoons and evenings on most days of that week, which will actually interfere with the CAB meeting. So we've moved it to the week before. What we plan to do at that particular meeting is have Dr. Daniela Dominguez, who presented at the Latino Family Summit last week on how systemic racism impacts communities of color and how that trauma affects their health and well-being. She's actually going to be coming back to make a presentation to the CAB on how to care for yourself when you are working in a community that's dealing with multiple crises happening at the same time. So more information to come on her presentation, but she's phenomenal. I learned a lot from her presentation, and we look forward to having her come next month. Switching gears to Open Government Task Force Subcommittee. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 3rd at 6 p.m. And there is a new schedule available for those subcommittee meetings. Those will be happening the first Thursday of every other month. So the next meeting after the June 3rd meeting will happen August 5th. So again, agenda and more information to come on that. And then switching gears to the Community Improvement Grant Program, which is a program for our new members, is a program that the CAB runs. So community improvement grants are now available for residents to apply for. The first application deadline is June 30th. And absolutely no worries if community members cannot make that particular deadline. There are 2 additional deadlines, September 30th and December 31st, that are also available. So there will be different times to apply, and the CAB will be making selections at various times this year for projects. We did conduct informational grant meetings last week, grant program meetings last week, where we reviewed the application with community members and took community member questions. We have the English version of the meeting posted online right now. We're still working on getting the Spanish meeting posted online as well. Both will go on the YouTube channel, and then I will be working on posting them to the grant website. Please, again, share that grant application with your community contacts. I will post the grant website link in the chat in just a few moments. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about because you are new and need more information, I'm more than happy to meet with you and chat with you more about the grant program. It's a really fantastic program that the CAB has been running for, I want to say, about 15 years now. So with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to Magali, who is going to give an update about the upcoming fire prevention series that we have in May.
Thank you, Danielle. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Magali Thayes, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement. Welcome, Member Richardson, and welcome, Member Square. So lovely to meet you in a virtual way. So I just have two really quick things I want to let community know. Sort of another program that's happening is the City Merit Awards. I just wanted to remind everybody about that. So if you know a fantastic person that's been doing incredible work in the community or a nonprofit organization that you'd like to nominate, you can find that information on our website. And also, I think, oh, awesome, thank you, Danielle. Oh, I thought you were posting the merit. So we'll post the City Merit Awards information. I think it's a great way to recognize our incredible community members, and the due date is July 10th. And the other thing I wanted to talk to you all about is our program called United by Fire, which is sort of a new program that we're piloting this year. As Danielle was mentioning, you know, our community has been hit with a lot of different crises. We're experiencing compounded traumas as a community. One of the traumas that unites us all, unfortunately, is fire. There's nothing political about it. It's just what it is, you know. And so we are looking to start a series starting May 24th. Our first kickoff event, we're going to have someone come and talk to us, an Indigenous person in the community, about control burns as an ancestral practice, and also, you know, a form of renewal and of the biodiversity in our area. And then second day, we would have some folks from the mental health professional world, you know, talk to us about different methods that we can apply. I know a lot of community members get really triggered when they hear sirens or different weather events are happening. So what are some different tips and tricks that we could try, you know, not just for ourselves, but maybe for our children, to kind of get us through those difficult moments. Another day, the third day, we're going to be talking about home hardening. What can we do with, you know, within our homes to have some defensible space, or just sort of different materials that we could work with. And then the last day, we're going to have some more information about evacuation zones in the city of Santa Rosa, you know, high-low sirens, just kind of emergency alerts and notifications. For some of these programs, we're going to have a program completely in Spanish, and then secondly in English, or vice versa, depending on the day. So we'll make sure as soon as we get sort of the graphics around that, to send that over to you, so that you can help us hopefully get the word out to community about this program. And that is all I have.
Great, thank you for all of that information. I knew that some things were in the works, and it's really fun to hear all the details around that. With that, do we have any questions from our CAB members on these staff reports? Member Barnett, I can see you starting to go for a keyboard. No questions? Okay, I'm just gonna keep on a roll here. I'll keep it going. As I do this, if any other questions come up, please let me know. I wanted to ask Magali, if you have the Indigenous speaker secured for your event on the 24th?
We are in the process of asking our local tribe permission first, right? Because we want to be as respectful as possible with this process. So we're acquiring permission, and then we do have someone we'd love to work with. And if the tribe feels comfortable, then we'll move forward with them. So we're just kind of awaiting to hear back from them. Yeah.
Great. I have another resource if you need, and within the Pomo tribe. So, and just saw him speak on a similar topic. So,
Oh, wonderful. I'll email you just to get information. Thank you.
yeah. And then I also wanted to ask, just to clarify that Open Government Task Force, the next meeting is on June 3rd, and then it's every other month, correct? So there isn't one coming up in May.
That's correct.
Great. And that big launch that you talked about for I realize there's a soft launch that's coming up in a couple weeks. So maybe by mid-May for the online community engagement platform, Let's Connect Santa Rosa. And then you talked about a big launch, or maybe the official launch in June. Is that a place that we're going to have our Civics 101 videos, or is that something farther reaching, maybe in the future?
Oh, yes. So it'll definitely be a place where we can put the Civic 101 videos, as well as we're building out the Citizen Engagement Academy. So I imagine that those videos would go on that particular project site as we gather community engagement around the Civic Engagement Academy.
Great. And for those new members that are here this evening, our Civic 101 videos is something we may mention a little bit when we get to our subcommittee reports, even though we'll just kind of go backwards a little bit there. So, but we'll keep it moving forwards now. And I think that's it. Is there any questions that have come up from our members about the staff reports? If none at this time, can I open it up to public comment?
There are no hands raised for public comment.
Great, thank you. Moving on then from item number 6, we'll go into item number 7, scheduled items. 7.1 is meet our CAB members. I'm so excited for this. Thanks, Danielle, for including this in the agenda. This is where we're going to open it up to each CAB member so that we have an opportunity to introduce ourselves to each other and to the public as well, if we have the public in attendance, and share up to 3 items that we're hoping to address as members. And just a little context for this is that we haven't done one of these in quite some time. I think that the last time that we maybe have introduced ourselves a tad bit was back in November of 2019. So we have been delayed by COVID. In 2020, we had months and months that we weren't meeting. We have had a couple of our members go a little bit more in depth and do introductions of just one of our camp members, but we haven't done this kind of a round robin type of an introduction. So you haven't missed anything. This is something for all of us right now. Really excited to get to know each of you a little bit more, and would love to start with a veteran here to CAB. So Member Barnett, if you may be able to start for us, kind of set the stage to introduce yourself and share up to 3 items that you're interested in addressing.
All right, Danielle, start the timer. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Cherie Barnett, and I was appointed the Community Advisory Board January of 2013 from former council member Aaron Carlstrom. I was subsequently reappointed by now Mayor Chris Rogers. I'm the former chair of the Community Advisory Board, and I apologize that there is a hedger going on in the back of my microphone that I just realized. I'm like, oh, that's gonna be fun. So I'm gonna be real quick. So I've served on the CAB now for a minute. And I've seen a lot happen with the community improvement grants. So CIG is very close to my heart. It's it's one of those really unique opportunities when we can put our values into action. And I have fought for the community improvement grants to expand the program. I got in the mix a couple of times to expand the program and make it more inclusive. I have seen it flourish into what was our Neighbor Fest program, and I'm extremely excited to see it in some ways getting back to its roots as a community improvement program. But I look forward also to us getting back to that day with in-person events. So if I had 3 goals, it would be a resurgence of Neighbor Fest, i.e. in-person events. Would be a resurgence of community events where we can actually do work around direct promotion of CIG. And then I think if I have one more goal, I would say this is big, but I would love to see a return to a neighbor summit that the CAB had a direct involvement with. When I first got involved with community engagement in the city of Santa Rosa, it was in 2011 at the Neighbor Summit, which was organized by a totally different group. And we have Santa Rosa together, and we have a lot of organizations, but I would love for CAB to take the lead on something like that when we are at a place where we can safely all meet together and have it be big and bold and far-reaching, and have it be about neighborhood engagement, interconnectedness in neighborhoods, social cohesion, possibly bringing someone like Daniel Ulrich to talk about social cohesion and the critical role it plays, and also maybe having it be connected with CIG grants and a presentation. So I think that's my pipe dream, in addition to having copious amounts of Neighbor Fest throughout the city.
Great, thank you. It's good to hear from you too. I feel like we haven't been able to hear from each other a little bit in these meetings lately, so I appreciate that you stepped forward right there and started us off. I'm going to go back and forth from veterans to newer members. We'll kind of head toward the middle right now. So, Member Inocencio, would you be willing to come up and share?
Sure, yeah. Can you hear me? Not sure.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, my name is Jorge Inocencio. I'm born and raised here in Santa Rosa. Born in 1993 here in Roseland, grew up here in Roseland. And I actually ran for city council in 2020. I got in second place, so then I got on CAB. And the reason for running is the same reason I'm on CAB. Growing up in Roseland, I wanted to see improvements in our infrastructure, improvements just in general. And I'm committed to that goal, and I'm doing it here through CAB. And if I could think of 3 goals, I guess one would be to build out the infrastructure here. 2 would be more parks here in Roseland and South Park. And 3, just more, I would say, community cohesion and just more community in general here in these parts. And then finally, more organization here in Roseland and South Park. So that's why I'm on CAB. That's what I hope to pursue. And thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great to hear those goals, especially for our Roseland and South Park area. Thanks for bringing those to CAB. Member Richardson, I'm going to ask if it's all friendly here.
Okay, so my name is Candace Richardson, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Santa Rosa. I grew up in Santa Rosa, over in Southwest Santa Rosa, so Roseland is very fond of my heart. First graduating class from Elsie Allen. So I guess some goals that I have is community cohesion. I now live on the northeast side of Santa Rosa on Rankin Valley, so it is good. I can see there's some disparity just in community based upon socioeconomic. I have a little one, so like access to education and healthcare is always really important to me, as well as access to mental health services. As a therapist, those things are important to me. So those are things that I'm passionate about and hope that I can, we can talk about it and encourage the community to be involved and promote those things.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming forward and sharing and being part of the CAB. It's great to have you here. So I'm going to pass it over now to Member Roberts.
Hi everyone, I'm Keith Roberts. I work for the County of Sonoma. I previously worked for the city for like 11 years. So in addition to that, I try to be involved in the community as much as possible outside of work. I've been on CAB for 2 years, was appointed by Don Sawyer, and I joined CAB because I want to be involved in something that has a diverse range of projects and just touches everything. Didn't want to focus on one thing, but the three things that came to my mind that they were already mentioned. One would be to help the city with improving infrastructure, like tangible stuff. Like that's a good way to make a difference is physical improvements. And then also the neighborhood aspect, bringing people together in the neighborhood. A lot of people haven't met their neighbors before, and if we could help them do that, that'd be great. And then the third thing would be if we can help with equity or promoting diversity, inclusion, supporting the BIPOC community, fighting discrimination, hate. That would be another great thing for CAB to work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Roberts. Good to see you here, and thanks for sharing all of that. Moving right along, Member Square, we'll bring this open to you if you would like to share.
Sure, why not? My name is Damian Square. I'm a student at San Francisco State University, double major in Africana Studies and Media. My goal is to be a lawyer with an emphasis in the entertainment field as an artist myself. I went to Santa Rosa Junior College, graduated from there and transferred to San Francisco State University. Real involved with student politics, student activism, established a Black Student Union, and revitalized the Black Student Union at Santa Rosa Junior College, which had been dormant for 10 years. Did some major things there that I won't get into. Went to San Francisco State, became the board member of the Black Student Union there as well. So I've been involved with community organizing, student activism for a long time. I'm a co-founder and the co-chair of the Sonoma County Black Coalition, which is a coalition of Black activists and community organizers that are here in Sonoma County to fight particularly for the Black community, which a lot of times gets underserved. My goals are centered around Black economic empowerment in Sonoma County, specifically for the Black community. One of the things that I would like to really focus on is the establishment or the funding for a Black Resource Center. There's already a young woman by the name of De La Shea who is heading a movement or an initiative to establish a Black Resource Center. She already has acquired a building. So if the building is already acquired and the momentum is already rolling, then I would like to see some consistent funding that would be directed towards that. Also in the Black community, and also in the brown community, we have a really large problem, a big problem with health disparities. And those were really magnified with the COVID-19 pandemic and how we've been locked down for a year. People can't go to the gym. People are sitting down, watching TV, eating snacks, and you don't have access to a gym. And even when we did have access to a gym, a lot of us don't have the disposable income to be able to consistently go to the gym. So I think the establishment of like a calisthenic park in a lot of these marginalized communities throughout Sonoma County, Santa Rosa, starting in Santa Rosa, would be really nice. Calisthenics parks are just open parks that have, bars and things like that. So you can do basic exercise, basic push and pull exercises using your own body weight. There's a lot of different things that you can do with calisthenics parks, a lot of different models that we can look at. They're really popular in New York and on the East Coast, but it's a way for people who don't have the economic ability to pay for a gym membership to go right to a place in their community to work out and get exercise in, using their own body weight with equipment that will be there 24/7, 365. And then lastly, cannabis equity grant. In Sonoma County, the cannabis industry is, $1 billion, hundreds of $1 million, possibly $1 billion industry. And a lot of these, there's not one Black-owned cannabis dispensary in Sonoma County. When you look at the historical discrimination of marijuana towards the Black community and how the war on drugs was particularly directed towards Black and brown men, I think it's imperative that as this new era of cannabis becoming this cash crop, it's important that the Black community is involved in that and is economically benefiting from that, since we were historically targeted for it for so long. So cannabis equity grant, establishment of a calisthenics park in Black and brown marginalized communities, and the establishment/funding for a Black resource center.
Great, thank you. I so want to fill you in on some things that I know from Reverend Lee Turner. I'm sure that you've already spoken to him and his center that he wants to do in MLK. So I'm hoping that you definitely stay connected to him. I know it's a further down the line project because they don't have a building yet, but we want more than just one, right? We want more than one center. So, keep that in mind. So thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm going to open it up right now to member Steffi.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I've only been a member for 2 months, so I'm almost as new as the two that just joined tonight. And welcome to you. I've been living in Santa Rosa just over 30 years. I retired just a couple years ago after 28 years as a marketing manager with HP Agilent. But my early years were troubled, and I was on my own at a really early age, and I went to night school for literally 20 years to get my degree. So when I graduated, I found out about social advocates for youth, and I became a mentor at LC Allen. Maybe when you were in, Member Richardson was in school, who knows? So that started me volunteering in all sorts of different ways. I was on the board for SAY for several years. The last 5 years, I've been focusing on senior advocacy issues, mainly with seniors in residential care facilities that are often overlooked, especially during the fire and left abandoned, and then during COVID. So I do a lot of advocacy around that. I am recently a cancer survivor, so I do a lot of work trying to help local cancer patients get to treatment and get the support they need. And I've also been working on a lot of political campaigns, local, state, and national. So when I look at being on the CAB, one thing that I really feel is important, and maybe considering all the amazing items you guys just mentioned, I hate the fact that I'm afraid to go downtown. And I really feel like a vital downtown area for all of us is an important way to bring the whole community together. So I'd love to be a part of helping downtown be a place that's vibrant again. And then also just housing for everyone. That's something I've been thinking about. I've done nothing on it, but I know being part of CAB, there'll be people that I can maybe partner with to help with that. And the other is criminal justice reform. I know I volunteered a lot for, and I forget the acronym, the independent office, that one, the county group that I worked for the campaign last year, and what the city's doing around that, right? That's at a county level. And I think what we're going to hear later from Danielle is going to be somewhat related to that. So those are the areas I hope to help with, and it's great to say hi to everyone, and thanks so much.
Thank you. It's good to hear from you. I know that you've come on board and not had that chance to do an introduction. So thanks, for sharing all of that information. And also, Member Baldenegro, you also haven't had much of a chance to introduce yourself. So I'd love to pass it on to you at this point.
Sure. It's great to hear all of you share, what your goals are. It has me thinking, and changing my mind of what my goals are as well. But I grew up here in Santa Rosa. My family moved here in 1974. So Rincon Valley has kind of been my home. I was in Los Angeles for 30 years, went away to college, stayed down there, and just moved back about 5 years ago, right before the fires hit. I moved back. I'm the eldest of four. My parents are getting older, so it was time for me to come back home. As I am digging into cab work, all of what you've shared are definitely on my goal list. Community, the importance of community. Neighborhoods, how do we revitalize neighborhoods and associations, and how can we play a role in that? And then, this is the first time that I've heard that there's a merit award and there's a grant process. So I'm thinking, what are some ideas on grants that have been done in the past? What could I potentially do? And when I look around to people that are doing great work with nonprofits, who could we recognize for a merit? So these are all things that are kind of percolating in my noggin, and I appreciate all of your feedback, and I look forward to hopefully soon we can have these discussions face to face. So thank you all.
You touched upon it. When will we be face to face? We won't ask that question directly just yet, because we know we probably have to get past June 15th at least, when the state opens up officially. My name is Leslie Graves. I'm your chair, and I joined CAB in November of 2019. So it seems like a long time, but like I said, we had a break for COVID. A little bit about myself is I work at National Women's History Alliance. So that sounds pretty lofty. It's not. It's kind of a job where I work in a garage, and I get product out all over the country that celebrates women's history and celebrates the diversity of women's history with an organization that started Women's History Month here in Santa Rosa. So that's one of the historical things that I do. I have a background in marketing and in production of events. I most recently probably known for putting on the Wednesday night market, being the manager of that event, as well as organizing the Women's March. So being politically active, being community organizer, and sometimes folks, when they hear my voice, all they know is that they've heard me at events as an MC, because I'm a professional MC as well for big like marathons and triathlons and things like that. So and that's just because it's fun, and not necessarily that was my lifelong goal. It was just something to do, and so I kept going and I kept doing it. I also do a little bit of writing with the Sonoma County Gazette. So sometimes I take information from this and I get it out there to the public. And that was one of my goals when I came onto the CAB, was communication. So I came onto the CAB, obviously, after a time where the fires had happened. We'd had multiple events that were emergencies here in Santa Rosa. And I kept hearing things like, I don't know something. Just like member Baldonegro said right now, I never knew about the merit awards, or I never knew about a grant, or I didn't even know. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, I heard from someone that said, I didn't even know that there was a community advisory board. These things motivate me. They make me a little upset, and then they motivate me. I came onto the CAB to increase our communication out to the public in order to let the public know some of these systems that are already there. Because how can we improve systems if we don't even know the systems that are already in place? So we've got a lot of improving to do, but we also need to let folks know what we have as a base so that they can give us feedback and they can help us to improve it. On top of that, I would love a neighborhood summit. That's something that I'm very interested in. I would love for more people to be able to organize neighborhood associations, and I realize the only way to do that is to allow people to know how rich we are in neighborhood associations already. There's a list on our city website, but that is far from letting folks know that these are regular, everyday people that are making this happen, and that it is extremely diverse. It is extremely deep. It has a lot of roots here in Sonoma County, and I want to make sure that folks know about it. And I also want to make sure that we kind of bridge the gap between the people like myself, was not born here in Sonoma County, was from southern San Diego, from a border town called Chula Vista, and came up to Santa Rosa after going to college at UC Santa Cruz, fell in love with the area, fell in love with the people, but then how do you make a difference? How do you give back when you realize that you love something so much that it's had such a positive effect on you and you can give back? We need to make those systems so that people know that there's grants out there, that there's merit awards out there, that they can get in touch with their council members. And I think that we're doing all of those things. So I'm really excited to do those things like the Civic 101 videos, to have this new website that's opening up, and then see where we can take it. So, and all of these ideas here are amazing. I think that we have some really far-reaching goals that we can implement. I'm more motivated hearing all of you than I have been in a long time. So thank you for sharing. And with that, let's open it up to public. Well, does anybody have questions for anybody else? So is there any CAB members who have a question for another CAB member? They'd like to know some details, something else about what they have said? Doesn't look like it. So public comment.
There are no hands raised for public comment.
All right, thank you for that. Well, thank you.
Sure, Grace.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Member Square, did you have your hand raised or no? Okay, I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Thanks for catching me on that. If I'm looking down during the meeting, it's usually because I'm writing notes. And if I look down, otherwise it's just so that I can read here. So without any other questions, no public comment, we'll be moving right ahead. So strategically placed was getting to know each other just a tad bit before we go on to item number 7.2, where we are going to select our CAB vice chair. So as you heard earlier, we do not have a vice chair. This is a role that's very important. I served as the co-vice chair prior to becoming the chair of the CAB, and how co-vice chair happened is when we had, I think in February of 2020, when we had a vote, two of us tied, and I believe it was even Member Roberts, I can't remember, that said, well, why don't you just both serve and have it be equitable? Just a bit of context with that, we had just come off of a city council meeting where two top candidates, two women, had tied for an appointment on the city council. They were then passed over, so they were taken out of the running, and a gentleman who had been already eliminated in a previous round had been granted the position as serving on the council for 10 months. Yes, I do see you squinting at that and almost rolling your eyes, almost each and every one of you. So just giving you a little context as to how a co-vice chair, two people serving in the vice chair position, happened in February of 2020. It was an equitable decision after coming off of something like that with the city council. So no more needs to be said about that. So we're going to go on to our CAB vice chair selection. So this is where, if you would like to nominate yourself or you would like to nominate someone else for the role of vice chair, that you can bring that forward now. Member Baldenegro?
I would like to nominate Jorge Inocencio for vice chair.
Thank you for that nomination.
I'll second.
Member Roberts is a second. And we can have multiple nominations and then go to a vote. Is there any other nominations from the CAB? And I do want to make note that you can nominate yourself and you can be brand new and be vice chair. So let me actually, I'm going to back up. Member Inocencio, this is not to bring your nomination into any other light. I just want to give everybody full information that the vice chair role, some requirements of the vice chair role. So I'm going to hand it over to Danielle to give that information. I'm sorry I didn't do that already.
Okay, thank you. So the vice chair serves as backup. So the chair, obviously, as most of you know, facilitates the meeting. The vice chair serves as the chair's backup. So in case the chair has to miss a meeting, the vice chair will facilitate the meeting, as well as the vice chair also attends agenda setting meetings with the chair and city staff, so myself and Magali, as needed. We don't meet too often, only when we really need to check in on things, because you guys are really great about setting your own agendas. And also the vice chair can again serve as a backup in case the chair isn't available for things like if the CAB has a presentation to do to city council, like a report out on the CAB grant program, the recruitment workshop, or any type of public facing event where we need CAB representation, that person will serve as the backup.
Member Square, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Do I see any other nominations? If I don't see any other nominations, it looks like I don't. At this time, can we go with Danielle? Would you like to handle a roll call vote for CAB Vice Chair?
Sorry, yes, I see a member of the public has their hand raised, but it's my mom. And I was just wondering if it had to do with this, but I think it was the last item, so I will answer the question. I will have her put her hand down. So yes, I will go ahead and do that. Sorry, let me pull up this really quick so I can do that.
Does he get the opportunity to accept?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Member Inocencio, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do, and thank you so much, Manny, for nominating me. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Roberts.
Okay. All right, so we'll do the vote now. And just for new members, for your awareness, normally when we're in person, we don't have to do this. We usually just do the good old-fashioned hand raise, but because we're virtual, I have to do roll call vote. So please bear with me. Member Barnett?
Yes.
Member Baldenegro?
Yes.
Member Inocencio, you can vote for yourself.
Oh. Can I abstain? That's weird.
You can abstain, but you also can vote for yourself.
All right, I'll abstain. That's weird.
Member Richardson?
Yes.
Okay. Member Roberts?
Aye.
Okay. Member Square?
I'll abstain as well. I'm new. I don't know. You know.
Okay, sure. And Member Steffi?
Yes.
Okay. And Chair Graves?
Yes.
Okay. And so the motion passes with the majority of the board voting yes, with 2 abstentions.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I really look forward to, serving as vice chair and learning as much as I can, because, I think CAB's super important, and I'm excited to see what opportunities there are in working all of us together as a board. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks for stepping up, even in a little acceptance speech right there. I loved it. This is great. Coming off of the Oscars. Won't make you walk off stage or anything. Stay right there. So we're going to be moving on, and we can talk definitely for the next meeting if we want to share on the agenda as well and get you involved in the agenda and sharing that. So our next item is 7.3, our Community Empowerment Plan Listening Session Report. So this is where Danielle will be going over the presentation, the Community Empowerment Plan Listening Sessions Report. And
can I have the host put my presentation up, please?
Absolutely. I'm getting it to full screen right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Magali, is there anything you want to say before I start?
I just want to say Danielle's done an outstanding job of from the very beginning of this back, late summer. I came on a little bit after this was established, and she's just been an incredible team member in making sure to get this out to community. So,
all right. Thank you very much. And now I see this is up, so we will go ahead and jump into it. Next slide, please. So first of all, I want to let everyone know that this is a brief overview of what will be presented at next week's study session on May 5th. The study session item itself will go into much more detail than what I have here this evening. Part of the reason why is because we don't have any representative from the police department here this evening due to a scheduling conflict. And so we don't have as much detail on their part, which is why they're also going to be presenting separately on their reform updates. However, the report, when you have a chance to review it, you will notice that there is quite a bit of information in the report itself about the police reform updates as well. So to start off, a little bit of background on the Community Empowerment Plan and how we got here. So as everyone knows by now, May 26, 2020, George Floyd was killed by an on-duty police officer, which sparked protests across the nation and as well as here in Santa Rosa. Those protests called for an overhaul of the use of force policies as well as increased law enforcement oversight and accountability. The city responded by developing the Community Empowerment Plan, and as part of the Community Empowerment Plan, we held a series of listening sessions with Santa Rosa's communities of color. Next slide, please. So before I get into the listening sessions, the Community Empowerment Plan vision and goals. The vision, actually, let me take a step back too. Some of you were not here for this, but for those of you who were, you may remember that in July 2020, I actually did another presentation regarding the Community Empowerment Plan overall to the CAB. You can view that presentation. The recording of the meeting is available in the city's legislative calendar as well as the city's YouTube account. And that provides just the overall information about the plan and at that particular time what we had hoped to accomplish in setting off on this journey. So the vision of the plan was to build a trusting and open relationship of respect between SRPD, the Santa Rosa Police Department, and the community, and a space for ongoing, inclusive, and constructive dialogue is available. There were 3 main goals with sub-goals associated with this. So the first one is to increase constructive and inclusive dialogue between leaders from our people of color communities in Santa Rosa and Sonoma County and the city of Santa Rosa. The second one was really specific to the police department and their updating their use of force policies and other reform issues. So the community is provided with opportunities to review and provide input on SRPD's use of force and community policing policies. And the third one is more of the evaluation mechanism, and which is establish a feedback loop to engage effectiveness of efforts with and in the community and among city staff. And that really relates to not only the community empowerment plan itself, but also how the city does community engagement and how effective we are in doing it with all community members. Next slide, please. So for the listening session report, that is only specific to goal 1 of the community empowerment plan. Again, the city, Santa Rosa Police Department, Chief Navarro will be providing an update on the police reform update work that they have done so far based on the information we collected at the listening sessions on May 5th. So outcomes from goal 1, we engaged roughly 280 people, of which 265 identified as people of color groups or community groups. 18 listening sessions were held with 13 community groups. 5 of those listening sessions were follow-up sessions with the groups that we'd already engaged with. We had 18 one-on-one conversations and 15 informal group conversations. Next slide, please. So the listening session outcomes. We had 215 participants. Oh, and I should mention, these were held between June and December of 2020. If you look at the original plan, we had hoped to get the listening sessions done by September and have a report out to the council. However, due to multiple challenges and barriers, including 2 wildfires that impacted our city, the pandemic, and our ability to meet with community members, and overall staffing, it was Magali and myself. We had some challenges. So we actually held them between June and December of last year. So we had 215 participants. Again, 13 community groups, 5 of which identified as Latinx community groups, 4 Black community groups, 1 Indigenous community group, and 3 mixed race community groups. And from those listening sessions, 5 themes occurred. Next slide, please. So those themes were build relationships between Santa Rosa Police Department and the community, including youth, invest in community programming and services, particularly for our people of color communities, create police accountability and oversight mechanisms, address institutional racism, systemic racism, and culture of white supremacy in Santa Rosa, and uplift and celebrate Santa Rosa's people of color communities. And 5 was address homelessness in our neighborhoods. And based on these recommendations, on these themes, 7 community recommendations rose to the top of the list. So next slide, please. And these community recommendations. So the first one, engage through an anti-racist lens, create an organizational culture that values public engagement with all community members and increasing access to public engagement opportunities. So the development of our community empowerment plan was really the first step in this direction. We will continue as a city to make purposeful efforts to involve our communities of color and engage with them, as well as other community members who have been historically left out of the conversation. Our Office of Community Engagement is working on tools and resources for our own city staff to utilize when engaging with all community members around really what are considered to be best practices around community engagements. And we're also working with you guys to educate the public on why it's important to participate in their local government, how to participate in their local government, and develop the tools needed so people can do that. So for example, the Civic 101 videos that was mentioned earlier is going to be one of those tools. Through our open government ordinance, we are developing a citizen guidebook to participation that will be available in English and in Spanish, as well as if there are other languages out there that we need to provide this information in, we need to know that, right? So we do know that Spanish is the second most popular language spoken here, but are there other languages that we might be missing? We know from one of the listening sessions that we had with one of our Black community groups that there is a language that is very important, particularly when we're having an emergency and those alerts, those SOCO alerts are going out, and we need to quickly alert our community. There was a request for a third language to be used. In addition to that, so again, I mentioned ensuring that our non-English speaking community members have access to what's going on here in our local government. So now we're translating all of our city council agendas into Spanish, and other languages are available upon request. And in addition to that, Spanish interpretation services are also available for city council meetings, and as well as other city hosted meetings, which for those, it's available upon request. I mentioned Let's Connect SR earlier. So our digital engagement platform will allow people who aren't able to come to meetings but might be able to engage digitally. That will be available. I mentioned the the Citizen Guidebook to Participation. Project advisory boards is another one. So when we have something like the general plan update or other significant planning projects where a major plan or other resource for the city is developed, we will have a project advisory board for that, again, available in languages other than English for people to participate. I know that we have, I believe, at least one person, maybe more, on our general plan update advisory group that is monolingual in Spanish. And I believe there was talk also for our general plan update advisory group to have a smaller set of those group members to review once the draft plan has been created, review that from a diversity, inclusion, and equity lens to make sure that it's a plan that's inclusive of all of our community members. So number 2, commitment to inclusion, diversity, equity, transparency, and access. So the community recommends that the City of Santa Rosa make a public statement on the importance of diversity, inclusion, and racial equity, and in addition to that, taking it a step further, include diversity, inclusion, and racial equity and transparency as part of their mission statement. The city has taken some initial steps in this direction, including last summer, the mayor and city council and city manager put out actions for change letter to the community regarding how they will do better for our communities of color, in particular our Black community members. Earlier this year, actually just a couple weeks ago, the city council also put out a statement standing in solidarity with our Asian American Pacific Islander communities and denouncing the violence that has occurred to those particular community members, both locally and statewide and nationally. Also along the lines of diversity, inclusion, and equity, the city has been working with the SEED Collaborative, which is an organization that is helping the city develop plans for hiring, staff retention, staff trainings, and community engagement with all community members, but really specifically focused on increasing the hiring of people of color in our organization, and also retaining those staff. Let's see. We also hired an equity. Sorry, this is a really long name. A diversity, inclusion, equity, and equal employment opportunity officer recently, also known as the equity officer, who started in March of this year. And the city hired an equity and public health planner to make sure that all of our planning documents have both a public health perspective as well as, or health and all policies perspective, as well as looking at and making sure that those plans are equitable for all community members. And finally, we've developed the Multicultural Roots Project, stories of Santa Rosa's Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. The goal of this project, as I have presented to the CAB, is to create visibility of Santa Rosa's people of color communities by highlighting the contributions of past and current community leaders and what they have done to make Santa Rosa what it is today. Let's see. And then the third one here on the slide is declare racism as a public health crisis in Santa Rosa. This has been happening across the country. With Santa Rosa doing this, they will have joined hundreds of other cities, as well as multiple statewide health organizations throughout California. And most recently, County of Sonoma has declared racism as a public health crisis for the county. In addition to that, the state of California is working on a bill called SB 17, which is a bill that would create the Office of Equity for the state of California to ensure that that equity is part of the work that the state does across their agencies and organizations. And more about SB 17 is included in the report. So next slide, please. The fourth community recommendation is mandatory trainings and educational sessions for all city staff, appointed and elected officials, and members of city boards and commissions. This includes not only SRPD officers and staff from their agency, but all staff across the city. It also includes a public acknowledgement of how institutional racism impacts communities of color, including those here in Santa Rosa. Some of the trainings that community members have requested are things like development of self-training, where staff members examine their own humanity and the humanity of those that they serve and their roles as public servants in the community. Ethnic study sessions with an emphasis on history of policing in the United States. So staff receives educational sessions from a qualified ethnic studies facilitator, integrate this education on the history of policing in the United States and the impact that this system has had on communities of color in these sessions. In addition, community members have also asked that officers receive required trainings that include cultural competency awareness and sensitivity trainings, power dynamics such as power and privilege trainings, systemic racism and white supremacy culture awareness trainings, and emotional resilience trainings and mental health resources. In addition, some community members have also requested mental health screenings for officers. Next one. Hello? Okay, sorry, I thought I heard something. Okay, number 5, civilian oversight of Santa Rosa Police Department. So this one includes not just having the model of the independent law enforcement auditor, which our police department has or will have soon. They did have one in the past, but having an additional mechanism for oversight, such as a citizens oversight committee. So an update on that is that police department has recently issued a request for proposal for the independent police auditor. But they are also continuing to explore some additional components for oversight, including an ILARO model, so the Independent Office of Law Enforcement Review and Outreach, created by the County of Sonoma. In addition to that, the chief actually has established his own Chiefs Community Ambassador Team, or CCAT, which has not officially met yet. I believe they have finished selecting all of their members, and they are getting ready to have their members go through the community policing experience, and then they will begin meeting, I believe, sometime in May or June. So I will provide more information once that's available. Next one is restorative justice circles with the community. We heard a lot of feedback from the community that while they do want more relationships and engagement opportunities with the police department, the first step would be having restorative justice circles and healing opportunities with the community, and the acknowledgement of this need that the community has. Again, more information to come in the study session, but we are looking at the possibility of having our violence prevention partnership. They have a lot of connections with restorative justice organizations here in the community that can help us with this goal. In addition to that, not just with the police department, but with staff from various parts of our agency, as well as city council members participating in these restorative justice circles with the community. Next slide, please. Okay, and the final recommendation is to continue to explore best practices around responses to protests and demonstration. And so there was a really great webinar that our staff attended from the League of California Cities on trauma-informed responses to protests. And really it's getting to know the community in which you are serving and what issues are important to them. So why we're having these listening sessions and continued engagement with the community. Also, the city recognizing the humanity of why these protests happen. What is the history, and why do people continually come out again and again? And also, along with that, recognizing that there is generational trauma and that our communities are impacted by that trauma because of the history of these protests. Refrain from labeling protesters or demonstrators as dangerous individuals. And this is something that the community both expressed for not just city employees, but other community members as well. There was a lot of talk last summer, and when protests and demonstrations come up about protesters not being good people, and that's not the case. That's not true. They're out there for a reason, and it doesn't do anyone good to put a label on protesters or demonstrators, and they're exercising their First Amendment right. Engaging with the community and finding out what they need to feel safe. And so we did ask a safety question in the listening sessions, and we are going to be continuing and expanding our listening sessions with the community over the next couple of months. Next slide, please. So other steps taken by city staff, particularly both our police department and Office of Community Engagement. There was the creation of the City Council's Public Safety Subcommittee, which has met several times since last summer. The model of response to mental illness and homelessness, which is modeled after the CAHOOTS program in Eugene, Oregon. That is in the process of being planned and built out. And we had Captain Cregan come to the CAB a few months ago, I believe it was in January, to talk about what that looks like and what the plans are for the future. The Chiefs Community Ambassador Team, which I mentioned previously. The Mary Lou Lowrider, I've talked about that a few times. The Sonoma County Lowrider Council was one of the groups that came to a listening session, and they asked both the mayor and the chief if they could partner with them on building a lowrider patrol car. Would not be an active patrol car. It would be an engagement tool used in community events, and also as a recruitment tool to get people interested in the profession of being a police officer. And then the Multicultural Roots Project, which I mentioned as well. So next slide, please. So next steps, I mentioned the study sessions on May 4th and 5th. That agenda is up and available, and all of the reports are there. Day one starts at 1 p.m. There will be the Human Rights Commission report item, which will be presented by members from the Human Rights Commission. The after-action review of response to peaceful protests and civil unrest in May and June of 2020, which will be presented by the city. The independent review of the police department's internal affairs investigation of specific incidences of use of force by officers that occurred during the community protests in May and June of 2020, which will be presented by that independent auditor. And day 2, this listening session report, which will be in much more detail, the police reform update as well. Next slide, please. And with that, that was my brief presentation. I really encourage you to go through that report, read through it. You'll get much more information than I was able to provide you today, as well as attend both of the days next week. And I will leave it there for now and turn it over for questions for Magali and me.
So this is where we open it up to CAB members if you have any questions about the presentation. And I did see earlier in the chat area, Member Square, you had some information to share, I believe.
Yes, I see that, and actually that is the language, and I'm sorry, I'm going to completely butcher it. Tigrina? Is that how you pronounce it? That is, I'm sorry?
Tigrina.
Okay, that is the language that was requested from one of our community groups to be added to our emergency alerts that go out during emergency situations.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Member Steffi?
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much for doing that, Danielle. I'm so glad to hear that our city's been working on this. And as a new CAB member, I really wasn't aware all that was going on. Just a quick question, you might have covered this early on, but in each listening session, what % of the people on the city side were from the police department?
That was a great question. That would be our chief of police. And that was it. And then we had our mayor at the time, Tom Schwedhelm. We also had myself, Magali. Sometimes we would have, if he was available, our community outreach specialist, Gustavo Mendoza. He would attend with us. And then there were a couple of times that our economic development director, Raisa de la Rosa, she attended as well. Those were the main staff involved. There were a couple times that we had some council members show up as well. But that was very specific to their district.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from members?
I guess I could also, just to provide a little bit more information, our hope for the expanded listening sessions, not only getting out to different community groups, but also having different members of the police department participate as well. So the police department did last year establish a community engagement team. That includes both the sworn officers and civilian staff who are interested in community engagement and kind of leading and running those community engagement efforts that they have with the police department, like Coffee with a Cop and some of the other things that they do. So more of those officers and civilian staff will most likely be part of those expanded listening sessions, so that they have an opportunity to listen in and hear feedback from the community, and it's not just the chief that's listening in.
Right, that would seem to be really important. In fact, I would think it would be the ones who weren't interested in doing the, all those outreach, the ones that should be actually attending. Just 2 cents worth.
So I'm going to jump in, and if I don't see any other hands up, and while I am bringing forth some questions and comments, maybe we'll have other, Member Inocencio?
Yeah, maybe just a clarifying question. So this is what's going to be, part of what's going to be presented to the City Council on Tuesday?
This particular report won't be going until Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
We will go after all of the much bigger reports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
And again, that was just like super brief. I went through that pretty quickly. We're going to go way more into depth in that presentation next week.
Okay. So I would love a quick question first before I head into my larger ones. You mentioned really briefly that there was a police reforms report. So a report on what reforms may have already been instituted at this point and others that are on the list that haven't been instituted yet. I went through that report that you sent to us today. I didn't see that there. Is it there or is it in another spot?
So that would include the CAHOOTS model, the mental health, the response to mental health. I'm forgetting that long name, but that model, so it'll include that. It will include CCAT. It will, and I'm sure that the chief will have other things that they'll talk about. I'm sure he'll go extensively into the trainings that they will be providing because they have required trainings that happen every year, but they are adding additional required trainings that police officers will have to now take. In addition to the ones that have already been required. So those things are, I believe they're partnering with Community Matters on those trainings. So cultural competency trainings, improved implicit bias trainings. And Magali, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that either, if you know any more specific details.
Yes, and I want to apologize. For some reason, the power in my office went out and just turned everything off. But yeah, I know there will be more details. Like there will be some details in our report, as well as the report that's going to be following ours, that May 5th, where they will include more information. Where the chief of police will be including more information as to sort of what they've done since last summer, programs that have been added, programs that will be coming up. So that will definitely be addressed as well right after ours. Did I not hear that question right?
Yeah, also I'm looking right now at their presentation on police reform, and it looks like in addition to those things that I mentioned already, like engagement, and empowerment, et cetera, updates to their policies, updates to programs that they have, and also what they are going to be doing in response to both the after action report and the investigation on use of force report. So that presentation has been uploaded with the agenda. So I'm going to send that out right after this meeting is over so that everyone has it and has access to read all of those documents if you'd like.
That's great. Thank you. That just want to make sure that that's available, that folks can look at that. And I guess I get a little bit reforms versus restrictions. So I'm really looking for those restrictions. I'm not looking, I love the fact that we're going to have, anti-bias training, that we're going to have more trainings that are addressing some of these needs that we have, but we also need the restrictions. So that's what I want to see in there. And I'm hoping to see it. I'm hoping that those things get addressed when it comes to use of force. So jumping right to that is that oversight piece of it. And when we talk about civilian oversight, I want to kind of frame this with a little bit of context that I think that we've been talking for over 2 years now for civilian oversight of the Santa Rosa Police Department, if I'm correct, that we haven't had an independent oversight agent or person for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So it isn't just from the summer, from protests. It is actually well before that we haven't had oversight, and it occurred just about the same time that our new police chief, which isn't so new anymore, came on to be the police chief. We got rid of our past oversight, and then we got a new police chief, and we haven't had oversight the whole time that we've had our police chief now.
So the only thing I can add to that is I know that was the conversation of one of our, I think it was our council meeting or public safety subcommittee meeting, but the police auditor position has been approved and is coming. So, and I just wanted to also add to the prior question, in addition to these reports happening on May 4th and May 5th, with the work of Seed Collaborative is going to be developing a plan that is specific for our police department around issues of equity as well. So just kind of wanted to add that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to frame some of this information because it's a lot of information. It's a lot of kind of, you know, listening session information and program information that has occurred. And it almost like you can get a little bit lost in the abundance of the information and not feel grounded in what is, and what is, you know, what is occurring and what has occurred. So that's kind of where I'm headed right now, just so you know. So getting back to the civilian oversight, or an auditor / civilian oversight, which I realize are two different things. So we're talking about the oversight of the police and the auditor. If we bring on an auditor, which is a paid position, that is different than a civilian oversight committee. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, however, there are models. I went to a training on, or a webinar on different models of civilian oversight. And one of the models included both the independent auditor and the civilian oversight group body together.
Yeah.
That's one model. So they function together and they have to work together. There is another model where it's just the independent investigator and just the civilian oversight. And the recommendation from the national organization that was doing this was that they be together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the county's going through a little bit of a transition with that right now. So coming to my point in this is that we talk a lot about equity, we talk a lot about diversity, we talk a lot about inclusion, but how to actually make that happen. And when we get to the civilian oversight committee, much like I would have loved to have had this take place for our general plan advisory committee, community advisory committee, to propose paying people. I think that we need a stipend, that we need to get paid. I realize I'm not talking about our board right now, but I just think when people sign up for a 2-year community advisory committee and the general plan committee, or it was the downtown station area specific plan committee, or in the report that we just looked at, oh goodness, there was another committee that was highlighted in here that like Karen Weeks was on and whatnot, the
Open Government
Committee. I think that these committees just, in order to increase the diversity, in order to have inclusion, in order to have people of different voices, of different backgrounds, of different interests, to feel like they're a part of it and that it is a necessary part for them to be involved, that we need to come up with that similar model that we heard about in Eugene, Oregon, where people are getting, it's not a huge stipend, but you know, it's $17 an hour. And when you have a meeting every month and it's a couple hours long, it helps to pay for childcare. So it helps to, take the sting out of it. So I'm putting that forward right now. I really want that, to hopefully make an impact.
And if I could just add that there are a lot of community engagement models that, to your point, are paying their participants if they want to get a more diverse and more equitable group of folks participating in this information. And I would highly encourage you all to make public comment on May 4th and 5th, because I think that, like you said, there are a lot of folks who don't have the funding to get a babysitter. There's transportation issues. They'd have to take, they'd have to not get paid that day in order to attend certain things. So I would agree with you. And I think public comment is going to be a great way to make sure the council understands, like, the community is requesting these things.
And also the council is starting to have that conversation at the council level right now, right? Because it's really difficult for people to run for a council seat because it's not a paid position, and people have to work, people have children and families to take care of, right? And to have to take off time to spend at a 5 to 7, 8 hour council meeting is not realistic for most people. And so they are starting that conversation at the council level, and when they continue to have those conversations, that's another great area to bring up this. Well, pay, stipends for our board commission members and for community engagement opportunities, our advisory boards, etc. Got to keep hammering away at that issue, and as many different places as you can make public comment, and even not making public, writing your council members and making sure, hey, look, this is really important to me. Like, just repeating that message to them over and over again so they get it loud and clear.
And so I realize it's too late to try to do something like this now at this meeting where we, drafted something and it was from the CAB itself. But just to clarify, because I want to clarify, if we are to make public comment on May 4th and May 5th, and as I understand it, just to also bring this information up so that everybody here knows that there is public comment at the end of the meeting on the 4th, so after the reports, and then so the meeting starts at 1 o'clock. There will be 2 very heavy and detailed reports that happen, and then public comment will happen at the end of that day or evening at that point. And then next day on May 5th, that the meeting will start at 10 a.m. And then this will be more of that community outreach type of reports and whatnot from the community listening sessions. And then public input, public comments won't be until the end of that day, I understand, if I understand correctly.
Right, I think that's my understanding. So May 4th will be 3 presentations and then public comment, and then the May 5th will be 2 presentations and then public comment. But council members will be able to ask clarifying questions after each presentation.
Okay. And so my clarification here is that if we do make a comment on the 4th or the 5th, do we state that we are from the CAB or we're just community members? We're not representing the CAB.
Yeah, you can't represent the CAB in your comments. You could say that you are a member of CAB, however, your comment is as a citizen of Santa Rosa.
Okay.
Or a resident of Santa Rosa. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So with that, I tried to dive into this report as much as possible in that short time that we had, and I really appreciate the listening session report was a little easier to digest than the longer one that you sent us today. But I do have to transparently make a statement that I have been the organizer of protests in Santa Rosa, many of them over now 4 to 5 years. I've not always gotten a permit, but a majority of the time I have gotten a permit with the city of Santa Rosa to hold the events and the rallies, the protests that I've held. I don't believe that buying a permit or purchasing a permit with the city of Santa Rosa is the vehicle to guarantee safety of the participants of the event that is being held. So conversely, the free speech events that were held over the summer were non-permitted events. They happened spontaneously, they were reactionary, they were very much emotional. Most of us were, or some of us probably were at them. I know myself, I had family members at them as well. The difference there, I think that is a stark reality of the institutional racism that we're presented with, is that I purchased a permit. I had a sit-down conversation with a police officer. I had 4,000 or 5,000 people at a rally in downtown Santa Rosa. We closed off streets. We marched around. We had police officers available to us. They protected us. That shouldn't be why we were safe. It should be we're citizens. Each and every citizen that holds a protest, a rally, a gathering should be safe to do so. We shouldn't have to buy a permit.
Okay, can I make a clarifying point though? You don't have to have a permit here in Santa Rosa to hold a protest. It's
Correct.
not required.
Correct, but it does feel like you have to have a permit in order to be safe as a protester.
From my understanding, you have to have a permit if you plan on using the street.
No, actually, so if it's a demonstration or protest type gathering and you end up shutting down the street, you don't have to have a permit. There's no requirement whatsoever to have a permit. The city doesn't have like protest or demonstration permits. If you want to hold a special event and it's going to shut down the street, or a block party and you want to shut, yes, you definitely have to have a permit for those, but exercising your First Amendment right by having a protest or a demonstration, the city doesn't have any type of permit that deals with protests or demonstrations.
Right.
It's only special events.
Right. And I realize I'm kind of, talking around this free speech versus special event, but there have been free speech events that have been special events. I know because I've organized them, and I know that I've spent the money on having a permit. And getting a permit has allowed me to sit down and have pre-event discussions with police officers. And what I'm saying is that if I go out tonight and I have a free speech gathering of 100 people or 1,000 people, and it's spur of the moment, and it, whatever it's for, political, non-political, whatever, every protester should feel safe. That we're part of the community, right?
Yeah.
So that's a frame of reference that I just have to say out loud here in this space, and I hope that this is a safe enough space to say that, and that it's taken well. But I feel like we've had a conversation with our police chief, and I talked a little bit about the permitting, and I don't think that it made a connection, and it still stays with me. It resonates with me that I can buy safety. And I think that that's an institutional, systemic form of racism, inequality, and inequity. So I would like to see that changed. Probably enough about that. So with May 4th and May 5th, my last question is, what should we expect from it in and of itself on May 4th and May 5th is a study session. So what should we expect to come out of that? What should we expect to be able to communicate with the community that asks, like, what happens after that? Is there going to be action items that then go to the city council and then they vote on those? Like, how, I don't understand what happens.
That is a really, really good question. With study sessions, council cannot take any action on any item. However, they can make recommendations to staff for next steps. So they can make recommendations to our office on things that they want us to do. They can make recommendations to the chief on things that they want him to do, so on and so forth. The one thing that they cannot do at a study session is take any type of action, like a vote. That was our understanding of it.
But I think what's really important to note is that they won't be really having conversations until they hear from the public first, right? So I think that they're gathering all of the information around all of these things and then trying to make an informed opinion based on the reports and what the public will be stating that day. I think that's going to be probably the most important, because I don't think, in my understanding of the time I've watched the city of Santa Rosa, that anything like this has ever happened. So in and of itself is sort of new territory, and I appreciate that thoughtfulness of wanting to get all the information first, and coupled with public community opinion, and then moving forward with something.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the explanation of that, because I think that's probably going to be a little bit of a stumbling block with the community, is that you see 2 days of this, and it has been nearly a year, and we still, where's the action? We're still looking for action, right? Or there's going to be a good number of people looking for action. So just to even be armed with that information, that this isn't necessarily where action is going to happen, right? So I appreciate hearing that and being able to share it with the other members of the board. So while I have been talking a lot, thank you for letting me do that. Has there been any other questions or comments that anybody has? Yes.
So just in looking at the listening session report, the second key finding, right, was investing in community programming and services. And I think that's great that there are specific examples that will be presented to the council, but for the recommendations based on community feedback, I don't see any specific item regarding that, investing in these. Maybe I'm misreading it, but I just wanted to ask about that a little bit.
Can you restate that question? I just want to make sure I understood it correctly.
So the key finding number 2, right, from listening sessions, is invest in community programming and services, particularly for POC communities. Mm-hmm. But then in the second section, outcomes recommendation based on community feedback, I don't quite see that called out. I don't see that called out, meaning that it's recommended that we, the city engage in programming for POC communities specifically.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think that, some of that is answered in some of the programs that we're doing that are, for example, the Multicultural Roots Project, and also in asking for support from council for us to be able to continue to do that work. And some of the upcoming community, we want to also create a feedback loop for having these community listening sessions. So, once we take this information, what would make sense for community and council, what process would make sense, right? And then just kind of some other examples that Danielle kind of talked about was, the lowrider patrol car. It seems like, they're putting together, but in addition, what we want to do is take that lowrider patrol car and take it into community and have programs around, lowrider culture as healing and as an art and healing for community members, have a speaker series going towards that. Continue to bring speakers like Dr. Sharon Washington, who talk about explicitly, racism and institutional racism and how it impacts our lives today. So I totally hear you on maybe those things are not like clearly defined, maybe, but I'm happy to share some of our future programs as they pertain to that, once we get our budget approved.
Yeah, no, I would just bring it up because I mean, it's a key finding number 2, right? And I just want to make sure that the council understands that as well, and it's emphasized. But I certainly see all the programs, and yeah, thank you.
But no, thank you for asking that question, because now we know that we want to make that super clear when we do our presentation on the 5th. Thank you.
And really hope the council reads the full report, because there are very specific examples that the community gave us on what programming they want to see, right? And it's not just like the community engagement programming, it's economic programming. There were comments made from community members around a Black community center, around library in Roseland, around, you know, so many different things. And so it'd be awesome if they read the full report, which I'm sure they will do. So yeah.
Well, the good news in what I just heard is that we are getting the Roseland Library, so
Yes.
that is good. But we got to keep it going once we get it too. Any other questions or comments? With member, oh, now I just lost it too. I was trying to write notes as you were going, and I just lost one of them. Oh, so there was, right under that was number 2, create police accountability and oversight mechanisms. Out of the listening session outcome themes, that was number 3. I just put a little note on that around interagency oversight, because during the protests of last summer, there were multiple agencies that were here and involved in and had use of force, I believe, or potentially from other things that I've read. And so if we have accountability and oversight, but other agencies from other cities and county or other places come and we don't have, now that's out the window now, as I understand it. So I don't know how that can come about, but I think that that's an important little sub note in that, because then where are we? So, okay, I've made more comments than questions. Sorry about that, but there's a lot of information there. Thank you so much for doing all of the work, for doing all of the listening, for taking all of the notes, because one thing that you didn't mention when you answered the question from member Steffi as to what city staff were at the listening sessions, Danielle was at every single one of them. So when you see all of those numbers and you see all of that report, Danielle made that happen. And I really appreciate all of your hard work. And I don't know how you get it all done. So many, many, many appreciations. With that, do we have any public comments?
We do have one hand raised for public comment.
All right.
Cheryl, I've allowed you to speak. Can you unmute your mic?
Always encouraging when we have a Democratic president. That's obstruction today. Obstruction tomorrow.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Cheryl. Can you see the screen?
I can. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Very
Okay.
wonderful presentation.
All right. Well, your 3 minutes starts now. Thank you so much.
The question I had a couple. The question was basically, how does CAB interface with law enforcement? And then how will CAB have input on what police oversight looks like?
Would you like to yield the rest of your time?
So I'm doing my doctorate on policing and protesting, and I'm very interested in and I'm a member, a citizen of Santa Rosa, and I'm very interested in what is going on in our community. So very interested in doing a study actually on what is going on in our community. So that is the extent of my question.
Thank you very much.
So, Chair Graves, it's up to you if you would like to respond to the resident's comment. I will let Cheryl know that that because of the Brown Act and laws around open public meetings, we are not allowed to technically have dialogue back and forth between board members and members of the public. However, if the chair so chooses to answer the question, or if staff chooses to answer the question, I think that's okay.
So I'd like to thank the public for that public comment. It's becoming more rare in our meetings that we have the public here to make a comment, and I do appreciate your time. So what I would choose to do at this time is to ask the question. So what is the relationship between CAB and law enforcement as staff sees that?
Yep. So under city charter requirements for CAB, one of the requirements the CAB has is to address issues of concern or take in feedback from the community on issues of concern to Santa Rosa residents, including public safety issues. And public safety is specifically called out in the charter for the CAB requirements. So if the CAB so chooses to focus on public safety, whether it be police oversight and reform, or, you know, the CAB also does stuff around NeighborFest and fire prevention and disaster preparedness. So anything having to do with public safety.
Great. And our input on oversight and what that looks like. I will just add that we do have reports that are provided to the CAB by the chief of police. I think I mentioned in 2020 that we had a report by our chief, and we were able to provide some input at that time. As we have the new ambassador team that will be meeting, I believe it was mentioned in May or June for the first time, that I would hope that sometime after that, once they get them a little bit of ground underneath them, that we may have an interaction between the CAB and that ambassador team. And if we are able to form a civilian oversight committee, that after that, that we may have some interaction and some input as well, with various reports going back and forth. So just a brief overview right there, and good luck with that PhD program. That's a big one to take on. So no other comments from the public?
There are no other hands raised.
All right, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to 7.5 and the CAB subcommittee updates. But before doing that, I want to recognize that it is 8:03 and just what time it is. If there needs to be a break at this time, or we are just going to push through because we have this, and then future agenda items.
Raise of hands, who wants a 5-minute break?
Let's keep going.
Perfect.
Keep going. Okay, let's push through.
Chair Graves, I also want to state that we, I believe we still need to address item 7.4 before moving on to 7.5.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Oof. Appreciate that. Skipped right over there. 7.4, issues of concerns to city residents. This is a standing agenda item where CAB members can report on issues of concern to community members within their CAB areas and the city as a whole. So if anybody at this time has any issues of concern that they'd like to bring forward. Do I see any hands? Yes.
So I'll just keep it brief, but there's a community group here in Southwest Santa Rosa right around Dutton Meadows, and they are in the early stages of organizing to ask for better infrastructure and to oppose some of the housing developments. And so that's a big concern of them, meaning that the housing developments are coming in without the necessary infrastructure like parks, wider roads, etc. And I've attended one of their meetings, and so that's an issue of concern for them, and I'm just reporting that out to the rest of CAB. So, thank you.
Great. Are there any other issues of concern? I see none. So are there public comments?
There are no hands raised for public comment.
Great, thank you. Now moving on to 7.5 and CAB subcommittee updates. We have two subcommittees. We have the expertise subcommittee and the empowerment. Is there any updates from the expertise committee? No.
They did not meet this month and will not be meeting next month either due to the study sessions that are happening next week.
All right. Thank you. And the empowerment subcommittee is the committee I mentioned earlier in the meeting that is putting together the Civic 101 videos. So I think it's just member Roberts and I that are on that committee since the last meeting. So we haven't had a meeting in a couple months. But member Roberts, do you have a quick explanation of what Civic 101 videos are? Would you like to say that?
So yeah, we initially we're planning on a Civic Academy, and I think partially because of COVID and Zoom times, and also I think the city wanted to go towards video anyway. We shifted our efforts to videos, and we started to gather information that could be used. And it sounds like we're not going to be doing the bulk of the work. It's not going to be contracted out, which is a good thing because we're not experts. Yeah, it just covers all the topics that that our committee came up with, and probably more. All the critical services of Santa Rosa, some history about Santa Rosa and Sonoma County, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think the contracts, well, Danielle can talk about the status of the contract better than I can.
Yeah, awesome news. They have started working. And so For the Arts Productions, or FDA Productions, has started working on putting the videos together. So the content has been provided to them. They're sketching out the storyboards and the scripts right now, and they will be to us for review probably by next week. So I'm super excited about that. Anyone's interested in doing some voiceover work, let me know. Other than that, we also, we do need, we will be having the scripts translated. So there'll be one video English, one in Spanish. So we actually do need voiceover done in Spanish. So if anyone who speaks Spanish on the board is interested in doing voiceover work that can speak Spanish, please let me know. We do have staff that can do it, but it would be awesome if you guys want to participate to give you that opportunity. So thanks. Oh, and that content too, by the way, was used for the draft of the Citizens Guidebook, which is now in draft form and being reviewed by Magali. And once that is complete, it'll be off to the graphic designer. So we almost have that done as well. I'm super excited to report on that.
So that is really great news. And I'd love to maybe, I know I hate to put more on your plate, Danielle, but if there is there a possibility, if I laugh, it'll make it better. Is there a possibility that you could, in one of those, I think you were going to send an email with something, some of these links and reports, if you could make just a reminder in that email about that opportunity for CAB members to be involved in these videos and be a voiceover, because I would hate anybody to miss that opportunity. You guys, it would be so great if each person on the CAB was involved in some way and had their voice on this, I think that it would really go a long ways to representation. So
Yes, that is very doable. No problem.
thank you. So with that, any questions for us for those CAB subcommittee updates? Doesn't look like it. So public comment?
No hands raised for public comment.
Great. Now moving on to number 8, future agenda items. This is where I kind of go over what may occur, and if you have any other input for future agenda items, we'll be looking for that as well. So on your agenda, you can see that we have the Sonoma County Commission on Human Rights report. That report is still set to be highlighted in the May 4th and 5th meeting, I believe. So it's kind of been the plan that the city council will get to look over that report first. This is the first time that they officially are going to be looking over the report on May 4th and 5th, and then it might come to CAB.
I need to ask a clarifying question. If the council is going to hear that report at a study session, which is going to be not only live streamed, but recorded and available for the CAB to view, or anybody to view, does the CAB still want that presentation to come to them?
So what you're suggesting is that you could just put a link like with our next agenda, and we could watch it on our own.
Or you could have them come and do a presentation. It's completely up to the board how they want to do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
My understanding was the chair of the Sonoma County Human Rights Commission wanted to come to CAB.
We could ask. Definitely.
I think since that time, since the time of the report being issued in July of 2020, that the chair had changed as well.
Yeah.
So it might, I don't know where that status is right now. I do know who the chair is, which is Jerry Threet, and he will actually be leaving the area in a month or two as well. So there's going to be another change.
So if I could just clarify the report, the Commission on Human Rights report will be presented by Jerry Threet, who is the current chair, and Demetra Smith, who is the former chair. So just wanted to put that out there.
And you mean in presenting on May 4th?
Yeah, they're going to co-present on May 4th.
Okay. My input would be that we definitely get the link sent with the agenda for June, and that potentially have a discussion around it in the June agenda. And that way we can make a more informed decision. Okay. Does anybody oppose that? Is everybody okay? All right. And then the next one is the next potential future agenda item is caring for yourself while working in the community during times of crisis. It says May 19th, but I think when you talked about it, you said that she would come back and do that after May. No, that is.
It is scheduled for May 19th.
Okay. So that's in May. And Community Improvement Grant Program, the project selection. So the deadline to get in the Community Improvement Grant applications is June 30th. So in our July meeting during the summer, we will be looking over the applications and making selections.
Yeah.
And then the last one is a Recreation and Parks Department presentation, and that time is to be determined. And that is part of our charter, right? To have that presentation, so we'll need to. No, that isn't. Oh, never mind. Okay. Then it's the City of Santa Rosa Equity Officer. So after a few months of onboarding and whatnot, and getting her feet underneath her, then she'll be coming and doing a presentation to us at some point. Then the Community Engagement Division Strategic Plan will be coming up at some point. The General Plan Update will come, and the Sonoma County Homeless Count, I think that was supposed to be. Also could be a presentation in the future. Are there any other future presentation items?
Danielle, real quick,
CIP, since it falls under us at the charter level, we don't have community outreach plans, right? Because we can't do them right now in person. But I don't think we'd get out of having to do CIP community outreach. And I know you guys are working on the tool, this new. So I would suggest that once we do the presentation on this new community engagement tool, that probably one of the early CAP discussions as a future agenda item would be tying it in with CIP as a starting point. So I would say, if it's not already on your future agenda items list, as first things first, let's get the online tool and then we can talk about it. But I know that it's part of the charter, so I'm bringing it up.
That project is on my list of one to add to that site once we've done the live launch.
Yeah. And can we get clarification of CIP?
Capital Improvement Program, so the infrastructure budget for the city. One of the CAB requirements is to collect community feedback on infrastructure priorities every single year before the budget study sessions. And so usually we do that summer and fall, and then we provide that information to Jason Nutt and his team so that they can then present the information to council.
And just for our new members, we did have a presentation by Jason Nutt of the community improvement projects.
Capital improvement
projects.
I know.
Just a month or 2 months ago, I believe. So those are in our agenda archives as well online, which is also a great link to include for new members. Because the website can be confusing to try to look up agendas and stuff. So, so thank you for that. That was noted. And I don't see any others. Are there any public comment on future agenda items?
There are no public comments.
All right. That brings us to the end of our meeting. I want to remind everybody that our next meeting is now on May 19th. That is the third Wednesday of May, which is a change from our usual schedule of it being on the fourth Wednesday of May. So May 19th, put that in your calendar. I know we'll be getting agendas and a reminder from Danielle, but before we adjourn, I just wanted to make that mention of that. And at this time, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
A second from Member Roberts. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for sticking in there for that extra time. Really appreciate it. And welcome to our new members. It was great to see you here. Look forward to hearing more from you as we go on with meetings.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.